I like bananas, coconuts, and grapes. I like bananas, coconuts, and grapes. I like bananas, coconuts, and grapes. But could you survive as Tarzan of the Apes? In 1912, Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote a book called Tarzan of the Apes, which not only became incredibly popular, but also sparked an entire genre of story. Tarzan ended up having multiple sequels, comic books, movies, and became a cultural icon. And if you mention the name Tarzan to just about anyone, they will know who you're talking about. They'll know you're referring to the loincloth-wearing tree man that swings through the jungle going, but could you survive as Tarzan of the Apes? In today's thought experiment, we're going to take a look at the King of the Jungle and see, 1, could you be raised by apes? And 2, what would you be like if you were? Now, first of all, the ape family that Tarzan has depends on your telling. In the book, the apes that Tarzan lived with are called the Mangani, who are described as anthropoid apes, sort of a cross between a gorilla and a chimpanzee. And we know the difference because Tarzan actually fights a gorilla in the book, and it makes a point of mentioning how they are the mortal enemy of the anthropoid. It's probably for the best, too, that Tarzan's family are chimps or bonobos, because gorillas wouldn't actually be able to fulfill his needed nutrition. See, gorillas in the wild primarily eat shoots and leaves that humans can't digest, whereas bonobos and chimps have a diet more similar to ours. So at least Tarzan would have a chance if he was being raised by chimps. Even so, I don't think Tarzan would last very long. Chimpanzees reach full sexual maturity in 7 to 8 years, though they don't usually start producing offspring until they're in their teens. But an 8-year-old human simply wouldn't be capable of taking care of themselves in the jungle, or with keeping up with an adult chimp while it moves from the floor to the canopy and back again. On top of that, Kala, Tarzan's ape mother, wouldn't be able to go into heat or have another baby until Tarzan was either dead or raised. And Tublat, her mate in the book, would never allow Tarzan to hold her back for that long. And right from the start, Tarzan would be in tremendous peril. His ape friends could hurt him very badly without really meaning to, since chimps are 1.5 times stronger than an adult human, even though they're only half our size. He would never be as good a climber as the chimps, which would mean that he would be susceptible to ground predators like leopards or lions. Even other chimps would form a major obstacle in Tarzan's life, since they routinely go to war with one another and are not shy about murdering or even eating their fallen. All this is to say that it's very unlikely that Tarzan would ever survive to adulthood. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he did. If Tarzan reached adulthood, what sort of man would Tarzan be? Well, I'll tell you right now, he wouldn't be this pretty boy. First off, if Tarzan were a real person raised by apes, he would be the most stinky, smelly, gross, matted, disgusting person you've ever seen. Consider, he's never in his life ever actually bathed beyond getting soaked by the equatorial rains. And the only grooming that's ever happened to him was having lice picked off his body and eaten by his ape friends. He would be super gross. On top of that, you also have to figure he'd be covered in scars from run-ins with his ape friends, even if they're not trying to hurt him, as we discussed earlier. He would have lived his entire life naked in the jungle. Sorry, Disney, no loincloth for your boy. Apes don't wear clothes, and neither would Tarzan. He would be beyond tan. More than that, he would also be super ripped. He would have muscles on top of muscles. He'd need to in order to be able to climb like a chimpanzee. But because chimps walk quadrupedally, his muscle arrangement might be very different than what you might expect. He certainly wouldn't look like an underwear model. He'd probably look like a weirdo. One thing you can be sure of, though, is that he would have very thick legs. He would need to because he'd be walking in a crouch all the time. Edgar Rice Burroughs, though an amazing writer, was not a good psychologist, and he didn't really understand about psychological development. The fact of the matter is that he believed that just because Tarzan was born a white man, that he was genetically superior to all other beings, and that he would just learn how to do things like shave and read and use tools by himself without being shown, and that is simply not the case. Humans are only as good as their teachers, and Tarzan would have been taught by apes. According to studies, apes show the intellectual development of a 4-year-old human, so Tarzan would be pretty dumb by an education standard. That said, he would have better reflexes and better instincts than most humans, since we don't usually have to fight for survival every day. When Tarzan meets Jane, it's going to be a big game changer, since he's never encountered humans before. But if Jane's hoping to teach him her name and share an intimate moment, she's going to be disappointed because Tarzan is going to have a very hard time understanding or learning language. The longer he's been around the animals, the harder it's going to be to acclimate him to human culture, and many of the children that have been raised by animals in real life never learn to speak. In short, It's super unlikely that Tarzan would survive his life in the jungle, but if he wants to even have a chance at it, he needs to keep his eyes and mind open, and always be creative. Thanks for watching.